Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden. We have a really fun day today. We actually have some people from Proven Winners here, and they are taking lots and lots of picture and photo and content for many things, for the Gardener's Idea books, for different newsletters, to feature some of the plants that I have in my garden. It's really, really fun and really exciting. They've been here since about 5:45 this morning, and we've just been working with the light. It's getting to be about mid-morning right now, so the light's a little bit too strong, so they're actually in the office working on editing some videos and some photos. And I thought I would take the time to take you guys around the garden and talk about something that I've been meaning to talk about for quite a while. And it's probably the thing that I get asked about the most in comments and email and messages, and that is my drip irrigation. So I like to think of drip irrigation as an ongoing process. It is not a set it and forget it process. It's something that you have to continually address and continually adjust if you have a garden like I do, where you have a lot of different watering needs. And so it's like I was saying, it's probably the question that I get the most is, what do I do for drip irrigation? What do I put this plant on? How long do I run my drip irrigation for? And I never really have an answer for that because it changes all the time. So unfortunately, for those of you who are hoping that you could just set up your drip irrigation once and just forget about it, I'm here to say not quite. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. Things change, weather change, the seasons change, how big the plants are change, the water needs change, and it just is a constant thing that you have to keep checking in on and adjusting and changing as needed. So when I have people who ask me, I actually just did a Master Gardener's presentation, and at the end I do a question and answer, and I got a couple questions on how often do I water? How much water do I put on this type of plant? How much water do I put on this type of plant? And even for people who are local to me, it was hard for me to answer. I could answer them, but then I would have to say, but that changes in the fall and that changes in the spring, and it's just something that I am constantly adjusting. So knowing that drip irrigation is something that you're going to constantly be monitoring and managing and even maintaining, I think it's really important to understand the components of your drip irrigation and watering system. I also think it's really important to understand the signs that the plants are giving you if they need more water, or if they need less water, or if they need less frequent water. The plants are giving you signs, and if you can read those signs, you can know how to adjust your drip irrigation or your watering schedule to make your plants happy. So let's get started with the lifeline, the most important part of my garden that keeps it going with the water, and that is my irrigation controller. So hidden behind my hose link and this thuya right here is the lifeline of my garden. It is my Ratio drip irrigation controller. And this thing on the outside is just a weather box because we have it completely out. At our last house, we actually had our Ratio controller in the garage, and this one is obviously out in the weather, so we want to protect it a little bit. But what is really cool about this system is it hooks up to our mobile phones, our cell phones, and we have an app that we can control it. Now, you don't need a Ratio system like this. You can have like just a regular system that you put in your garage and you go in and you can push the buttons. The reason why I like this so much better though is I can change the frequency, I can change the duration of my watering, I can pause my watering, I can check my watering from my phone. And I don't have to keep running back into the garage to push a button, to hit manual and push run. I can do it all directly from my phone, which helps when I'm actually out in the garden and I am installing drip irrigation. It also helps when I see like the weather report and I see that it's going to rain tomorrow. I can put a rain pause on my drip irrigation. And of course you can do that. You can have systems that do that automatically, but I always like to do it manually because I am a control freak when it comes to watering of my garden, and I like to pay a lot of attention to it. So the irrigation controller is huge. It's a really, really important thing, and having something as easy as a Ratio, I think, makes all the difference in the world, and it's worth every penny, and it's really not even that expensive. So the irrigation controller is connected to the manifold, and you can't see my manifold. My manifold is underground right here, and I have some pots on top of it. But the manifold is basically what turns the water on and off to the different zones in your garden. So basically the irrigation controller will say, okay, it's time to turn on zone 1 for 20 minutes. Then the valve will open up and zone 1, the pipes in zone 1 will start filling with water. So once the water turns on in each zone, the water starts flowing through what's called the main lines. And in my garden, you can see my main lines because we haven't buried them. We live in California. We don't get freezes, so we don't have to bury our main lines. You can, though. Lots of people will use white PVC pipe and bury them under the ground so that they don't freeze. But we decided not to do that, 1, for budgetary reasons, and 2, because we hadn't quite figured out exactly where we were going to be planting all our gardens. Like, we didn't know that we were going to have these garden beds back here when we installed the drip irrigation. So we wanted a little bit of play with it before we started burying everything. So basically our main lines are just right here. They are 1-inch tubing. And this is where the most amount of water comes through. It allows it to go from one place to another place in our garden very, very quickly. Now, some gardens that are smaller, they only need main lines and then the secondary lines, which are 1/4-inch tubing or spaghetti tubing. Because I live on about an acre, we need main lines, and then we also need secondary lines that are ours. We are using 1/2-inch secondary lines, but you also can get 3/4-inch secondary lines, which are big tubes, but not massive 1-inch tubes or PVC pipes. So this is kind of a middle of the road thing. If you see this in your garden, this just allows for more water to get from one place to another very, very quickly. Of course, the smaller tubing that you get, the less distance it's going to be able to go. So you want, if you have long distances, you want to take it in the water in bigger tubes like this. Finally, after the secondary lines, the 1/2-inch or 3/4-inch tubing, you get what's called spaghetti tubing or 1/4-inch tubing that looks like this. And you connect it to either the 1-inch or the 1/2-inch or the 3/4-inch main or secondary line with a coupler right here. And then you can connect the 1/4-inch spaghetti tubing. And then at the end of it, you can put an emitter on. And this emitter right here, this is a 1/2 gallon per hour emitter. Emitters come in different sizes based on how much water the plant needs. And the regular sizes of the emitters are 1/2 gallon per hour, 1 gallon per hour, and 2 gallon per hour. There are also spaghetti tubing or 1/4-inch tubing that has emitters in line already inside. So if you can see this kind of bulbous area in the 1/4-inch tubing, this is actually an emitter inside the tubing, and you can get them separated at different distances, whether it's 6 inches or 12 inches or 18 inches. And this one, I think it's 0.8 gallons per hour, but you can of course get different size emitters inline tubing. And this is if you have a lot of plants in a very small area. This is really helpful rather than buying like say 20 of these emitters right here. Now, when you're deciding what size emitter to put on your newly planted plant, just know it's a best guess scenario to start off with. It's your best guess, but you're going to go back and you're going to look at that plant and see if it's showing signs of needing more water or less water, and you will adjust accordingly. But what I always do, and I always like to tell people to start off with, if you have a very small plant, a small annual, or a drought tolerant plant that doesn't like a lot of water, I will start with a 1/2 gallon per hour emitter on my 20-minute duration. If it's a regular sized shrub or perennial or a annual that kind of likes a lot of water, I will put on a 1 gallon per hour. If it is a big shrub or a plant that really likes a lot of water, like a hydrangea or a hibiscus, I will put a 2 gallon per hour. Sometimes I will even put two 2 gallon per hour, so it's getting 4 gallon per hour, 4 gallons per hour of water. Again, this is only a starting off point. This is my initial guesstimate, and then I will go back and I will check that plant and I will see if I need to adjust it. I've shown you all this before. This is a little kit that Jason and I put together. It's just a little container thing from Home Depot that I think is meant to hold screws and nails, but we have just separated it for our couplers. These are our 1/2-inch couplers. So here's elbows, here's couplers to attach 2 straight lines together, and then here's to tee a 1/2 inch off. And then we have our emitters, and then we have our 1/4 inch or spaghetti tubing couplers right here. And then, of course, we use a ton of these. These are called goof plugs, and these allow you to stop up a 1/4 inch line. Say, for instance, you had a plant there, and you had an emitter on that plant, and then you moved that plant, or that plant died. You would just cut this off and then put one of these goof plugs at the end of the line, and that would stop the water from coming out. Okay, so let's talk about the schedule. Like I said, my baseline schedule is 20 minutes, and I actually do 20 minutes once a day, but that is my baseline. If we get really, really hot, like triple-digit temperatures for weeks on end, I will bump that up, and I will decide whether I'm gonna bump it up to 30 minutes, even 40 minutes, or maybe I'll even do twice a day. So I'll do 20 minutes in the morning before the sun gets up, and then 20 minutes at night right after the sun has gone down. Normally, I like to water in the morning more than I like to water at night, because if you water in the morning, then that allows the plants to be nice and hydrated by the time the sun is hitting them, and hopefully they won't be sitting overnight in too much water, which could cause some root rot. So I always err on the side of watering in the morning, and then I water at night if I absolutely need to. And then again, during the winter time, when things get cooler or we get rain, I will always skip if we're having a lot of rain, like a good rainstorm. If we're just having a little bit of rain, then I'll just let it go. But usually during the winter time, I will water maybe 3 times a week, maybe 2 times a week. It really depends on the weather. It also depends on whether we have a lot of wind. The more wind that you have, the more you're going to have to water, because the more the water will evaporate. So it's heat, it's wind, it is the amount of daylight hours. Obviously, in the dog days of summer where we have really long days, there's more amount of time that the water is going to evaporate. And then the shorter days of the winter, you just don't need to water as much. And actually, a lot of people will just completely turn off their drip irrigation in the winter. I have a lot of plants that are winter bloomers, so I do like to keep my drip irrigation on. But like I said, I will skip it often, just based on the weather, and that's why I love having that ratio system that I can turn on and off with my phone. So once you've set up your drip irrigation and set your schedule on your irrigation controller, it's time to go back and to monitor your plants and to check and see if they're getting the right amount of water, too much water, or too little water. And let me show you some of the signs that you can look for. So I'm over in my center island right now, and I want to show you guys my purple pillar rose of Sharon that I planted about, I would say, a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. So this is a really, really cool specimen plant. It can get up to 16 feet tall, which is crazy, and it has these beautiful purple flowers on it. I was so excited to find this at the garden center. But if you look at my plant right here, you can see that the leaves are yellow. They're kind of browning and crisping on the edges, and they look a little droopy. And you might look at this and think, oh boy, that plant needs more water, right? There's crispy leaves, it's turning yellow, it's just not looking happy. But if I go down under here to the soil and I stick my finger in the soil, it is totally wet down there when I stick my finger in the soil. And the reason why I know this plant is getting too much water is because it's right next to my meadow, my California native grass meadow that I've been trying to seed. And so we've been watering it a couple times a day. So it's kind of like a no-brainer. This, I'm completely aware that this plant is getting too much water. But what I'm going to do just temporarily is I'm going to take the emitter that we put to it, and I'm just going to take it off and put it somewhere else. And so hopefully this plant will dry out a little bit. It's still going to get some over watering from the meadow over here, but hopefully hopefully that will dry it out so that I don't kill the plant with too much water while I'm trying to seed my meadow. Now, in my opinion, signs of too little water is easier to recognize than too much water, because too little water is browning leaves, crisping leaves, drooping plants, kind of plants that just look like they're crisping up and they're dying, like this really, really sad Spanish lavender I have right here. Now, this is a perfect example to prove the point that you have to go back and you have to monitor your plants, because what happened with this one is this emitter wasn't working properly and there was no water coming out of this emitter to water this plant. So unfortunately, this plant died. Jason and I didn't notice it until it was too late, but this just goes to show that it's not a set it and forget it type of situation. This 1/2 gallon per hour emitter going off once a day for 20 minutes should have been enough for this Spanish lavender, but of course you can see we had other issues, and had I noticed this sooner, I probably could have taken care of it, but we're all the way over here. You can see how far we are away from the house, and honestly, I just missed it. So rip to this plant, very sad, not enough water. So there are so many benefits to using drip irrigation. In my opinion, in a hot climate, a hot garden, it is an absolute necessity. It's so much better than relying on hand watering or sprinklers, because say you miss a day, say you get sick, say you have a long day at work and you miss one day of watering, your plants are going to suffer. So drip irrigation just gives you that guarantee that those plants are gonna get the water that they need to handle the hot temperatures. More importantly though, drip irrigation is a slow application. It's a drip of water to the plants, and that drip allows the water to percolate deep down into the soil. And what that does is that encourages the plants to develop really deep root systems, because basically the roots will follow where the water is. If you hand water and you spray, the water's going to stay on the top couple inches of soil, and so your roots are going to stay up there. If you do the drip irrigation, the roots are going to dive down deep into the soil, which is really important when you have hot spells, because you're basically growing plants that can tolerate the heat so much better than plants that have surface roots. So like I said, drip irrigation, in my opinion, is super, super important if you live in a hot climate. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of drawbacks to drip irrigation as well. For one, it's kind of confusing and it takes a lot of maintenance, and it's not a set it and forget it thing. You have to keep paying attention to it, maintaining it, adjusting it, checking it for leaks and blockages and all that kind of stuff. So it's not a set it and forget it thing. It also can be quite intimidating to a lot of people that are not used to drip irrigation. I know when I first started with drip irrigation, I was so nervous. I had no idea what I was doing. I was even nervous to go to the big box store to purchase my supplies. Now I feel totally fine. It's almost boring to me now, but I know it's a lot of intimidating for a lot of people who are just starting out, and hopefully this video helps a lot, and I've done other videos on drip irrigation as well. The other thing is, it's a lot of work to set it up. Instead of just planting a plant, I have to plant a plant and then I have to hook up drip irrigation. So it does take a lot of work in the beginning, but it's so worth it in the end. That couple of minutes it takes to install drip irrigation to a plant is going to save you so much time than having to hand water it, especially if you have a big garden like I do. You can see them still working there. So anyway, that is going to be it for today. That's my little spiel that I have on drip irrigation. I think it is so important, and yes, it can be kind of confusing, but it is so worth it when you figure it out. So hopefully this helped you all out a little bit. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comment section down below, and I will try to answer them in one of our Q&A sessions or even respond in the comments section. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.